Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jason and we're joined once again by our co-host Scott Michael Childers.
Hello.
Hello, Scott. So, this week we're going to look at something a little bit different. My wife's in education, and one day with a discussion with her, we were talking about reading and just how to get reluctant readers to read. So what do you think an author can do about that? Is it our job? Is it our duty? Is it our talent to reach reluctant readers? What do you think?
Well, I think there's a whole lot of stuff packed into that question. Is it our responsibility to get them to read? Not necessarily, but if we could promote literacy of any type, that's good for us, right? It's good for the world to have people who can read, write, explore different thoughts. So a big picture, yeah, it's everyone's responsibility to help reluctant readers find things to read. Now, are you asking, is it our responsibility to write directly to them? I would say no. It's not all of our responsibility to write for that group. Because, in my opinion, some of us have that talent to write to that group. Some of us have the desire to write to that group. But that's not a calling for each and every writer in the world. So I don't know, maybe you disagree with me on this or not.
No, I think you're spot on. I think you need to write to your audience, whoever that may be. It may be yourself. It may be an audience you've already built. It's really interesting topic to me, though, because there are so many reluctant readers out there. To go back to high school again, which I often do on these podcasts, it seems. I'm
glad we could be therapy for you.
There is life after high school. I had a very small group of friends who read books. Most people did not. Most people thought people who read books for fun were strange. So, and that's, I think, still...
In some circles,
circles, sure. So, as a writer, it is really interesting to try to reach the reluctant, or just the non-readers, just people who don't read for fun and wouldn't even consider it. And we've seen a lot of people that have really been good at reaching new readers and bringing new readers out there, and they've been so successful. John Green, I know I've met teens who, not that I'm hanging around teens, but just in passing, who have never read.
You write YA, so you have to do market research.
There
right?
you go. I'm not hanging around playgrounds, if that's what you're thinking.
We're trotting down a path we don't need to.
We are. But I know I've spoken to teens who have never read before. They found John Green, they fell in love, and they read all his books, and now they look for similar authors. Stephanie Meyer and J.K. Rowling, I think, brought out different groups of people, but they brought out huge groups of people who read all their books. And, Harry Potter spawned a whole new genre of young adult fantasy, I think.
Maybe not spawned, but definitely spotlighted it.
There you go, yeah.
I mean, you had people waiting outside of bookstores for the last book, and people deciding to troll them by driving past and spoiling the ending, too. So on both of those measures, it was a big, big hit. A book. When was the last time we had books that people were lining up outside the door, waiting in costume the night before? Not many.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool to get people to read. But, what did they do to bring people to read? I guess going back to myself, the first book I read for fun was Cujo, because one of my friends had been reading Stephen King and told me about this scene that happened in that book, and I couldn't believe, and I can't repeat that on this podcast and maintain our G rating, I couldn't believe you could put that in writing, so I had to rush out and read that book, and then I was hooked on King for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But what do modern writers do to get those non-readers to read?
Well, I think they write to their audience, and if they happen to find something that strikes the general public, that causes people to go out and tell others about, hey, look at this, this fabulous book. I know you don't read, but you got to read this one. I don't think attempting to reach that audience specifically, hoping to make a big hit, is going to work out for you. You need to focus on the story you're telling. Now, I think there might be ways how to tell that story that would make things better, but I really don't think the end goal should be, for the writer, generally, to write specifically for that group. Let me put a caveat. Yes, there are some people who do in the course of, say, course curriculum, or maybe that is their calling. It's like, I do want to write books specifically for that group, I guess. So let me backtrack a bit on that. But again, I don't think it's every author's responsibility, nor should it be every author's goal to hit that mainstream 1 in a million. I think focus on the story, and if it strikes gold, great. But if you keep trying to hit that, trying to follow trends, trying to create markets that may not exist now, I don't know if you're going to have much luck.
Right. I don't think you can chase the market either, and publishing is such a slow industry that if you say what's popular now...
Yeah. You can certainly keep abreast of trends, but don't try chasing trends only. You know?
Yeah, just be a copycat.
Yeah. And so, and again, I think with the previous example, we have two different things going on. We have people reading who don't normally read because it's become a pop culture phenomenon. Harry Potter, Twilight, those books became pop culture phenomenons. You're not going to get that with 99.9% of the books.
Right.
And then you have people writing specifically for reluctant readers, usually for school age, right? So again, what is the real question when we're talking about writing to reluctant readers? Is it finding new markets, or is it to help kids get through reading classes in schools? And I'm not an educator, so I might be using the wrong terminology. So if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments or contact me directly. And we may have to do a follow-up episode.
Yeah, I guess what I kind of took from what she was bringing up is more, how do you get the non-readers to get out there and read, and what can a writer do to do that? I don't know if it is possible.
I could probably tell you what some librarians look for when they're buying books for that group.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting.
They're looking for pieces that are easy to get in and easy to get out of, right? So there's a lot of action. I don't want to say it's simplistic in plot, because that's not really the case, but the plot points are easy to hit. There's not a lot of digging to go in. It's all very surface. It's all very boom, 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 and here we are. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, done.
Would you say people who aren't experienced readers would want it to feel more like watching a movie? You're just you're thrown in, it's easy.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, and it's entertainment.
Yeah, I think, and really, the characters are easy to distinguish from each other. The names aren't all similar. So you can tell, it's Bob and Chris versus Bob and Bobby, right?
Sure.
Things are easy to distinguish. I've seen some fantasy books where it would be really good, but the names are so similar to each other for all the different characters that it's easy to get confused. And you need to, for the reluctant reader, not the readers in general, but for reluctant readers, it has to be, it's easy for me to get in. I'm reading through, and when I'm done, I feel like I've accomplished something. It's not, what happened, right? Your plot is pretty much on the surface. Bad thing happens, good guy, bad guy,
You don't want reading to feel like homework.
Yes.
It needs to be entertaining for the reluctant reader, and actually for every reader.
Yeah. But
if reading's a chore, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, so if you feel like, hey, I've got a story, I think a reluctant reader might be the type of person who wants to read this, realize that you're not going to be doing a lot of deep psychological analysis in your, back to our author intent versus reader interpretation podcast. It's going to be pretty plain and cut and dried. And I'm not saying that you need to insult the reader's intelligence, but like you said, it needs to be like an action movie. You come in, you don't have high expectations to have your soul uplifted, and you just, that's what you're writing towards. It may be kind of formulaic, but if you feel the calling to get that audience, then that's the type of writing that would be more likely for them to get.
Yeah. what about marketing? How do you market to not necessarily a reluctant audience, but just a new audience?
Well, again, word of mouth worked for you when you were starting out. Word of mouth worked for all of these other books, especially the Reluctant. If a friend of theirs brings up something and says, I don't read, but here, this is good, and that is something where I'm just really marketing to the reader directly may not work because they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
They're not about books. They're not looking for news about books.
Marketing is, in my opinion, the single most difficult thing about writing.
Well, and that's why many authors don't self-publish, because there's also that marketing.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question. And again, you have to stop and think, is this really my role as the author to do that?
Right. Are you going to be more successful looking for people you know already read?
It's got to be more than just you. Because, of course, you're the author, you're biased, right? And you can say, this book is great for everybody. Really? I mean, really?
As you can see, we're at a loss.
Yeah.
It's a difficult subject.
It really is, because you don't want to talk about this saying, you don't want to insult people's intelligence. I think we've said that before. But again, if you don't have that calling, don't worry about it. It's like, I don't have a calling to write horror, so I'm not going to write horror. That's not what I feel like I want to write. I have no urge to try straight up horror. Now I might, as part of some other effort, do horror tinged. So that's the thing. I think I'm the wrong person to get that idea. Like I said, I can tell you what the librarians look for, and that's easy in, easy out. Characters are easy to discern just by name. And they're not trying to be simplistic and insult the reader, but at the same time, they don't want to invest a lot of time in brainwaves. This is casual reading.
Right. It's difficult to target an audience that doesn't know what they want. It's like catering independent voters. It's like, how do you, if somebody doesn't want to read, and he's like, well, let's write a book that'll make people who don't want to read it. It's.
Yeah.
I would personally say I don't think it is the writer's job. I think it's up to public outreach.
Well, it's not all.
It's
not all writers' jobs.
Right.
It has to be something you really want to do because you feel like you need to for whatever reason.
Yeah, and ask any author and they'll say, "Well, I wish more people read books." What can they do? Yeah, it's not. They're not setting out to specifically target non-readers. They're targeting whoever's going to read their books for fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's only so many ways that we can sit here and say, write for yourself, write for your audience.
Yeah.
And again, we've kind of gone around and around today with this because, again, it's important, at least I know for me, I'm assuming for you also, that we have literate people and people like to read, and that's why we want to write, is because we think that's important to us. But on the other hand, it's not in everyone's best interest to focus on the reluctant reader. And this is actually, I had something pop in my head just now. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of the dip when it comes to businesses. By was it Seth Godin? And basically the concept is someone does a service or business and they go up and they reach the top of that niche, right? Now they have a choice. They can stay at that top of the niche and be in control of that area and do very well, or they can try to get bigger target audience by going mainstream. And I've kind of adjusted some of the terminology they're writing, but what happens is when they start, they lose their target audience because they start feeling like they've been abandoned. The artist sold out. They've gone mainstream, and so they lose sales, they lose interest, and maybe they come back up out of that dip and become bigger than they were before. So where we see Rawlings and King and many of those, Crichton and names that you'll see at paperbacks at Walmart, right? They've gone through that dip, and now here they are at more mainstream success. King is King is technically still writing the same type of stuff, sort of.
I think so, yeah.
But he's considered a more mainstream author, whereas this other authors in that same genre are still in that niche. Or maybe they're trying to get through that dip and never get back out. So that's something to think about. It's like, do I want to go outside of my niche audience? Do I want to go through that dip and hope to become super mainstream author? Maybe, maybe not. You're going to lose some of your core audience if you start writing to that other group.
Yeah.
Not saying it's right or wrong. It's your choice as an author.
And it's a great question.
And this is something I'd love to hear both writers and educators, because they're usually the ones who deal with reluctant readers.
Right.
And youth librarians. So if any of them have any comments and want to educate us, I think if they would contact us or put a comment on the page with the podcast, it'd be great.
For sure, because this is definitely out of our area of expertise this time. But it was fun doing something a little bit different. So definitely let us know what you think. Check us on the web at www.writegoodbooks.com/podcast, and see you next time.
See ya.